Hello, Damien.
Sergio, how are you, sir?
Fine, fine. How you doing? Where are you?
I am in New Jersey.
You're in New Jersey, just promoting the movie, or?
We just got back from Europe. We've been doing a lot of press. Went to Sitges, went to London, France. It's been wonderful. Bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, yeah. And I heard the movie opened already, like in France and somewhere, and it's already like extremely
I
successful. Yeah,
I heard is number one, at least yesterday or something in France when it
yeah, yeah.
played. So that's incredible.
So how satisfying is for you not only to have these results right now, but to keep on working with this franchise? I mean, you started with this story like I don't know, like 10 years ago or more, and
Probably
then
more.
And
Yeah.
then you've been adding some interesting characters, not only like R, that was like the main villain and everything, but then you have Sienna, and then she's already in two movies portrayed by the same actress. So that's interesting, right?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, it's not typical. I mean, a lot of slashers, they usually start from scratch almost every movie. They bring in new characters and a new group of people to sort of just slaughter. I'm trying to tell a nice sort of cohesive story with characters that you can really empathize with. Not saying that other slashers don't do that. Of course they do.
Yeah.
There's Laurie Strode's and everything, but it's not the most typical thing. But yeah, it was really important for me when I wrote Terrifier 2 that I introduced the Sienna character that I really wanted my heroine to be as important as the villain, and it's just as much her story as it is Art's story. So we're following her journey alongside his. So that's it's exciting to keep discovering these new chapters of her sort of trajectory is really interesting. Always excites me. That's my favorite character. But I mean, this whole thing has been amazing, surreal. Like this news that's
Yeah.
coming out and saying, it's going up against the Joker this weekend, which is the biggest movie in the world. So, and that we never really thought we'd be in this situation. It's so gratifying. I think it's just most of all, it's gratifying, especially for my cast and crew, because we really put so much work into this film. We really never phone these movies in. We don't take any of this for granted. We always want it to be so much bigger and better than the last one on every level. Just the production, the cast, just everybody brought it to a new level. So we're excited that people are responding to it.
So you mentioned the Joker. It's a movie about a different clown, and then luckily you didn't decide to make a musical.
Yeah, no, not that I don't enjoy musicals, but yeah,
You
that's
do,
not
you do, yeah. You enjoy musicals, yeah.
I believe it or not, not to get lost in these weeds, but I just watched All That Jazz for the first time about
All
a week
right.
ago. It instantly became one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, it's
So
very
yeah,
good.
it's got to be the right musical, but sometimes they hit a nerve, and I really fall in love with them.
And then it's not only like most like slasher franchises just goes to like different directions and they change the story and everything, but then usually they don't keep the same like directors and creators. I mean, I know that you love John Carpenter, and then he started, of course, like he directed like Halloween. The second one he only wrote, but then things start like switching, and so that's very interesting too, right? That you're not only the director but the creator, or you're able to keep like control on everything.
Correct. It's very rare that the writer director also gets to retain the rights of the entire IP basically. So I don't have anybody to answer to, and for better or worse, for in regards to the story and the trajectory of the story, it's all from my imagination, which is nice because ultimately you will get some hopefully a nice cohesive story because with the movie studios that own the IPs, it's really about money. I mean, it's not and not to knock them. I mean, they do hire the best artists they
Yeah.
can to try and maintain some sort of level of integrity, making sure they can come up with the best story. But as long as the fans keep loving those characters and those franchises, they will keep making those movies. And inevitably, what happens is you start losing other characters that you really grew some sort of affection for, or you just invested so much emotion, time, and energy. 6 movies, before you know it, that character is gone, or you start a new timeline. And then I say this often, I don't want to fall into that trap. I don't want the audience to be like, why did I invest all this time in that character or that storyline for no reason, basically, where I have to shift timelines if I want to understand this character or that story. So that I'm very conscious of that. and I'm trying to tell an overall narrative within this whole franchise that I'm sort of exploring like a mini series. It's one of the reasons
Mhm.
why I'm not just throwing everything at the audience in terms of the lore and the answers in one movie, because I know I want to stretch this out at least one or two more movies. It's hard to say. I don't like giving a definitive answer because I never know when my imagination is going to take a shift or I have another idea. And instead, if I say one movie, but then I realize it's going to be two. So, but I know I'm not finished with this character yet, but I don't want to keep going just for the sake of making more movies or trying to just keep making money. I really sort of have that artistic integrity at this point still, where I just want to have a satisfying saga to tell.
But it was like a big decision, right, to decide to develop more the characters in the second in Terrifier 2 because I mean there's so much farther you can go with like I mean gore and violence and everything. I mean there's like here in this movie, well, the previous one too, but in this one there's a lot of war with like actors and the interactions. They're
Mhm.
like so realistic. So
Oh, thank you.
that's great. I mean, that's something that doesn't usually happen in slasher movies too. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of times in slasher movies, characters are dumb. Here, I mean, it's good. I mean, you put a lot of effort in that.
Thank you. I try and ground the protagonists and the drama in reality as much as I can. And then with Art the Clown and his shenanigans, that's where we kind of really dip into the fantasy and maybe the over the top moments, because I really want the audience to have fun, and especially we've tried to pull more levity out of these movies as we've gone further, because on one, it's just fun. I want ultimately the audience to have a good time with these movies, and I love getting them to laugh. I don't want the entire experience to just be bleak and miserable.
Yeah.
um, so that's become important. But yeah, I try and draw inspiration from real life, people in my life, family members, friends, whatever I could do to sort of ground these heroes, especially the Sienna character. I think that's important to have that layer of humanity, especially when things go really bad for those characters and you really sort of empathize with them. So that's always been really important to me.
Yeah, Laura, the girl who
Laura,
portrayed like
yeah.
Sienna, she's fantastic. But it's interesting because you have these human characters like dealing with a lot of stuff. But then art, I, I don't know if there's an evolution in art because he's the incarnation of pure evil, but I mean, he's great too. He's just, I mean, he's these sinister looks combined with like the funny moments and the
Yeah,
dancing and the gestures. I mean,
right.
has that evolved through the years? I mean, and then he's a silent character, so it's even more
Yeah.
difficult to make him like appealing, you know?
Yeah. Well, the irony is that the audience will has more fun with the most despicable character, right? It's like the drama is you're dealing with characters who are dealing with trauma and things, and but it's with Art the Clown, when it shifts to him, even though he's doing the most despicable, sadistic things, you're having fun with that character. So that's always interesting. But the character has certainly evolved, especially since, of course, when I recast the role and David
Yeah,
Howard became Art the Clown. I mean, he's a real actor, a theatrical actor. So he brought so many nuances and theatricality to it that wasn't there before. And as we go forward, I think David and I are trying to pull as much humanity out of Art the Clown as possible without losing the essence of the character.
yeah,
The more humanity that comes through, and not good humanity, but just there's something that the audience really gravitates towards. They like him more the more human emotion he conveys. And it really makes them wonder what's inside, what's in his head, what's making him tick. Who is behind that makeup, which is really cool. And it's not something you get the opportunity to do too often with slashers. A lot of times they're pretty one note and they're very restricted, or they're
yeah,
they're hidden behind a mask, so they can only emote so much. David can convey so much emotion through that character, even though he doesn't speak. There's so many things are said through his facial expressions and through his gestures where he doesn't need to. You know exactly what he's thinking or what he would be saying. And I think that fused with the dark humor really clicks with the audience. I think that's one of the secret ingredients is his extreme level of sadism on one level, and then in the next moment he'll make you laugh your butt off.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think the audience likes that roller coaster of emotions.
So there's a lot of religious imagery here. There was like
Yeah.
it was already in the second one, right? But here I mean, it's interesting because you had said before that this is related to you being like growing up as a Catholic, I think, or
Catholic.
Christian.
Mhm. Yeah, Catholic.
And then the movie's brutal. I mean, it can be funny, but it's, it's brutal too. But then at the same time, it could be seen as a Christian movie, right?
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Because it's just evil versus like, I mean, and then in those terms, pure evil needs to be evil. And then, yeah, so it kind of, when you start thinking about it, it makes more sense. And, I mean,
Yeah.
Passion
Because
of the Christ was very gory too. So,
very gory, of course. I mean, the Bible's very violent, of
yeah.
course. And I laugh when we get attacked often from people, religious people who haven't even seen the movie. They'll just see imagery or they know it's a violent movie and they're like, you should find Jesus, you should do this. And I'm like, if you only saw the movie and you didn't watch it with just these blinders on looking to hate or troll, you'd see some really pro God stuff in this movie. I mean, Cien is my favorite character, and Cien is it's blatantly overt. I mean, she's our Christ figure, not saying that she is some sort of reincarnation of Jesus Christ, but
Yeah.
that's all built into that character. She's suffering, and she's sort of the sacrificial lamb. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on there. But yeah, once I decided to dive into the epic battle of good versus evil and the supernatural, it was only organic for me to have to just spit out some Catholic imagery. It's what I grew up with, and I'm not necessarily religious. I'm
Mhm.
actually not
You don't
religious.
practice, like you don't go to church or stuff.
No, no, it was just part of my culture, my heritage
Yeah.
growing up. But I don't know where I really stand there. I'm open to sort of anything at this point in my life, but I love the mythology of it. I love the imagery.
Sure.
There's so much I love about heaven and hell, just good versus evil, angels and demons. I'm so obsessed with that. So I figured it was a no-brainer to start injecting that into this movie if I was going to go into the supernatural realm.
Yeah, but they will like Christian people will complain too because they will say, okay, yeah, you're using like Christian imagery, but you're subverting the rules because she's a girl now. So that's it. And that's related to the fact that some people have said too, oh man, you kill like girls in your movies. I mean, I think there's a lot of
Oh yeah,
different people that gets killed, but you
yeah,
have this final girl who's like a warrior angel. I mean,
yeah.
we haven't seen many or any final girls that were like there are like warriors, like mythical warriors.
Yeah, thank
So
you. I know. And that was one of my things. I wanted to, because in the slasher films, the killer isn't the star. It's always the final girl's the star. But of course, it's centered around the killer. The killer gets the spotlight. And rightfully so. That's why people are going there. They want to see
sure.
Jason, Freddy, Michael Myers. But I wanted to put my final girl up on sort of the same comic book level pedestal that Art the Clown's on, this larger than life, basically a comic book character, someone that would just jump off the page. So I wanted to put her in this amazing costume as if she was just this living, breathing Old Testament angel coming to really do some damage, to the bad guy. So to me, that was so fun because the final girl deserves that respect. Um, that's they're essential to these genres and to this formula. So I put so much love and affection into just on one level writing a very grounded, three-dimensional, vulnerable character who's also very courageous and also on the other level could turn into this sort of epic, larger-than-life comic book character.
Sure, sure. So the new movie takes the gore to new levels. I don't know. It could be like the goriest movie ever. At least in terms. I mean,
Ever, I'll take
I'm thinking about Peter Jackson, but those were like
that.
some. I'm talking about like innocent people being murdered and stuff. Yeah, that's very intense. So how challenging was it for you to find like new ways of like creating and shooting these scenes too?
It's always challenging. The more movies we make, the more challenging it gets because we put so much into each movie.
Yeah.
It's not like one big kill scene, it's like four or five. And then everybody expects us to surpass the one that we did prior. And I
Sure.
keep saying there's so many ways you can tear the human body apart.
Yeah.
And we're not only competing against our own movies, we're competing against every other slasher film or really gory film in the horror genre. So it's very tricky. So I'm always looking for inspiration. I'm looking around the garden, the kitchen, like what would he do with this instrument? What would he do with that instrument? Or you never know. You never know where inspiration is going to hit you. Like part two, I saw a picture of one of Jack the Ripper's victims in a book, and that sparked the bedroom scene. In
Mm.
part three, there's a certain shower massacre that they're already aware of and talking about. That is just my homage to Psycho. And I wanted to say, how would Hitchcock shoot that scene today? Would he be sort of as reserved or subdued with the violence as he was back then with the limitations, or would he be a little more graphic today? I said if I was given the opportunity to remake Psycho, I would show everything that knife could possibly do to the human body. So I wanted to see, this is my version of the shower scene, and I was like, let's not give Art a knife, let's give him a chainsaw this time, because I never wanted to give Art a chainsaw because I thought it was very too sacred to Leatherface.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I felt like we really needed to prove ourselves for a couple of movies and see if people were still gravitating toward Art the Clown. And then I felt like, all right, I think it's time, because I hadn't seen a chainsaw massacre as graphic as I would like to make one. So it was like, all right, if you guys aren't really going to get in there and do it, let me get in there, see what could really be done with that weapon.
But at the same time, it's just like you establish the rules you establish for Art as like he's able to use anything to murder
Yes.
people. So that gave you like plenty of room to just like try different things, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't want him to be beholden to one weapon because that gets just redundant. And I always liked how Jason just you never know what he's going to pick up next. But my whole the problem with that is just for me as a screenwriter, it's like you have to figure out how he's going to get all these new weapons. And I wanted him to be able to basically pull out whatever he wanted at any given moment. So that's the reason why I gave him that giant garbage bag. I wanted him to be able to carry everything that he has, and so it's literally his bag of tricks. He could pull whatever he wants out of it. Whatever I write, he could pull it out at any time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Gore was very popular during the 80s, of course, and then you obviously have like some reference from there. But right now, with all the technology and everything that we have, we can't just make them more believable. But I know that you use like mostly like practical effects, right? And then you probably some touches with like a digital with CGI, but it looks very impressive. I mean, it's something that wouldn't look so good in the past. In the past was more like, okay, I see. This is not real. So how has that evolved through the years? Because you've been doing this for more than 10 years already. And in this
Yeah.
case, I mean, the first scene is just like crazy. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. That's exactly how we approach these movies. We approach it going in that we're going to use, say, 95% practical effects. Because these movies are known for practical effects. I fell in love with practical effects. That's why I'm a makeup artist, obviously, and a filmmaker. That led into me
Yeah.
being a filmmaker. But now with the technology, you could do things that you could never do back in the 80s, where if you wanted to show, say you wanted to chop a head off and you wanted to show the head still being alive or twitching or whatever, you would have to build an animatronic or some sort of puppet. That never, as good as it is, you could always tell it's an animatronic. But now I could digitally take the actor's real face and put it onto the dummy that we build, and you could see that person reacting as their head's getting cut off. That was stuff you could never do, and we
Mm.
utilize that trick often. I always like if we get to a level where you can no longer use the actor, and you're reduced to a dummy because it's too extreme and you're still seeing the face. I always try and put the eyeball on, or if we can get the whole face on, we get that on. So that's one of the tricks we use. Still, often the effects don't work as well as you wanted them to, or because you're on set, the clock's ticking. These things take a long time, especially if they don't go right the first time. You have to reset. That could be hours. So you really only get like one or two opportunities to make these effects work as good as possible. So sometimes now you have to rely on your VFX team to just tweak things for you and augment them. And we did that for a decent amount of shots. And you can never tell because my team was really so good, my VFX team, that they just beautifully seemed, maybe if there was a Y or something they had to erase or a little something they had to add. It was just so beautiful, so seamless. I'm very proud of the work that my team did, the practicals and the VFX, but it's primarily old school practical effects done
Yeah.
by Christian Tinsley's studio, and he's one of the best in the business. We talked about Passion of the Christ. He did the makeup effects on Passion of the
Oh,
Christ.
okay, 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 okay. All
Yeah, how
right.
cool is that?
So I have
Incredible.
one last question, Damien, about like the reaction of the audience saw this movie still kind of a, I don't know, you start like an indie filmmaker. I don't know. I don't know at this point if these movies are still like indie because they're so popular and then they got into the mainstream. But how do you, usually like a lot of people don't like gore and a lot of people don't like very violent movies, even during the heydays of like gore, you know. But right now there's things are things changing. I mean, are people dealing with the violence in the real war
Mhm.
just with violence in the screen because it gives them the opportunity to just like take a distance or what?
I completely agree with that. And that's what I've been saying because I'm trying to understand it as well. It's not so much that I don't understand that it's trying to articulate it. And I really do believe that the darker reality is that the more of a cathartic release the audience needs. And on one level, we're in the most civilized time of human civilization, but we're also dealing with some very dark things, with just where we are. I mean, especially in America, this is a very divisive time. We're still having assassination attempts. It's 2024. It's like that's
Yeah,
still really intense. Violence is everywhere. It's so profound and prominent. So I really think that horror movies, especially slashers, kind of gives you the opportunity to put the most absurd, violent reality on the screen. And the fact, and come to terms with the fact that violence could hit you at any moment, and there's really nothing we can do about it. It's very scary. So it's kind of like putting that on the screen, coming together as a community and looking the devil in the eyes and saying, "All right, what do you got for me?" It's like,
mhm,
let's do this. Let's just dive in and look into the abyss together. And I think there's something really strong about that, something we do as a society. And we just laugh at the absurdity. I mean, to just make basically a mockery of it because there's really nothing you can do about it. So I think that, we're in a pretty dark time on one level. So that really might be why the violent film is sort of is prominent right now.
exactly. Thank you very much, Damien, for your movies, and this one is I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, sir. This was fun. Thank
Take
you.
care, man. Take care. Have a good rest of the day. Bye.
You too, buddy. Bye.